Good afternoon, everybody. Let me start by thanking INGEV for inviting the United Nations Development Programme and myself to be here today. And I'm going to talk about the role of the private sector in the Sustainable Development Goals. But here's a question. Show of hands. How many of you know what the Sustainable Development Goals is? Raise your hand. How many of you know how many they are? Come on, I can't hear you. How many? 17. How many of those, targets they have? No, that's a joke. 169, and they also have 231 indicators. Last year, 193 states, all member states of the United Nations, agree on those goals. It's a historical plan for people, planet, and partnerships. With its key principles of leaving no one behind, the Sustainable Development Goals are universal. They apply to all countries in the world, from the United States to Syria today, passing through Turkey, and my own country of Brazil. They are integral, and they are mutually reinforcing. With SDGs, the global community is committed to end poverty and achieve equality by 2030. There has never been a more opportunity and urgent time to unite forces. Together, we need to build new solutions to eradicate poverty in all its forms and to create a more peaceful, inclusive, and sustainable world. In the development context, a combination of traditional aid and market-based solutions, in many instances led by the private sector, has contributed to lifting hundreds of millions of people from extreme poverty. I think Emma Duncan just showed us the role of companies and corporations throughout history and how powerful those were. Access to education has greatly increased for both girls and boys. The spread of information and communication technology is helping to accelerate human progress, and scientific and technology innovation is driving areas as diverse as medicine, environmental protection, and energy. Yet, despite improvements in most countries, inequality remains a major challenge, as we've heard it today, putting at risk much of the progress made to date. In order to deliver the truly inclusive future, we need more and faster collective action. A recent UNDP and the World Bank report showed that 30% of the countries with data available had insufficient progress or were off the targets in fighting poverty by 2015. Estimates for total investment needs in developing countries alone range from $3.3 to $4.5 trillion per year for basic infrastructure, food security, climate change mitigation, and adaptation, health, and education. There is an annual shortfall of about $2.5 trillion in public and private sector investments in SDG-related sectors in developing countries. There are 65 million refugees in the world today, more than any time in history since the Second World War. And there are 240 million migrants in the world today. Now, bridging such a gap may seem a daunting task, but it is achievable. The SDGs have provided us with a unique, once-in-a-generation opportunity to seize on the convergence of intent across sectors that can set the world on a path of global sustainability and inclusive goals. The SDGs provided all of those sectors a common language, a common framework to dialogue. But if we want to achieve the SDGs, the private sector has a critical role to play in order to deliver the change we need. What then should be the role of the private sector in pursuing social impact and sustainable development? How the private sector actually does business has a major impact on whether growth and development are inclusive and sustainable. On average, the private sector accounts for 6% of GDP, 80% of capital flows, and 90% of jobs in developing countries. The private sector can be a powerful act in promoting sustainable development in ways that go far beyond corporate social responsibility and just funding. When Accenture and the UN Global Compact asked 1,000 CEOs from over 100 countries how they see their role in implementing the SDGs, half said they believe business will be the single most important actor in delivering the SDGs. 89% said commitment to sustainability is translating in real impact in the industries. Just a couple of months after the SDGs were adopted, a PwC study showed that 92% of business communities knew about the SDGs, while the figure was only 33% among the general public. However, only 13% of the business had identified the tools they need to engage in the SDGs. We are all hearing a number of companies incorporating the SDGs into their corporate mission statements because they believe that future business will depend on being inclusive and sustainable. But as Emma mentioned earlier, business' primary reason is to be profitable, is to make money. And there's nothing wrong with that, provided it's done in the right way. Just last week, the Business Sustainable Development Commission published at Davos a report that revealed that sustainable business models could open economic opportunities worth up to $12 trillion. What this report says is the companies that put the sustainable development goals at their core business strategies and operation could benefit by new economic growth to up to $12 trillion, generating 380 million jobs by 2030. This is promising. We need to understand that investing in SDGs, it's not about charity and it's not about corporate social responsibility alone. It's about business. The business that is profitable, that is commercially viable, but that is inclusive of poor people and is sustainable from an environmental point of view. The good news is that we know that many companies have committed to inclusive business models, including by developing commercial viable products and services which improve the lives of people living under $8 a day. That's half of the world's population. More important from the business point of view, that is a $5 trillion market, yet to be fully tapped. We at UNDP and my team, we actually hosted a business call to action, which is a global alliance that supports and showcase inclusive business models. To give an example, there is a company called Özel International, a leading eye care company, that has committed to provide eye care services and solutions to 50 million low-income people by adding 40,000 low-income youth to their distribution network. This will happen in 28 countries by 2020. Now, the same 28 countries represents 22% of Özel's sales. If they manage to bring 50 million people into this market, what does that mean for Özel? The CEO of Coca-Cola presented to us the 5x20 and presented to us the eco centers. What he forgot to say is that those are last mile distribution strategies for Coca-Cola. Those people are selling Coca-Cola products. The growing demand for environmentally friendly products and services has already created new markets and opportunities, which the early mover entrepreneurs are reaping reward. Consumers have been very important in this transformation, but so is capital. And we're starting to see an increasingly move by finance favoring sustainable investments. The world's biggest sovereign wealth fund, the Norwegians, is divesting from energy companies which derive more than 30% of revenues from coal and do not comply with the ethics guidelines. The Nielsen Market Research Company in 2014 found that 55% of online consumers surveyed from 60 countries would pay more for products and services provided by companies which are committed to positive social and environmental impact. Now, employees are also motivated to work for companies that make positive impact. For example, 62% of the millennials surveyed in the UK reported wanting to work for a company that make a positive impact and prefer to work for a company that has a purposeful goal than for high salary. But despite good progress, companies cannot alone achieve this big agenda, nor should they. For the private sector to succeed and companies to be supported in pursuing sustainability, national governments must play a crucial role in creating the adequate policies, regulations, incentives, and enabling environment for this new type of inclusive business, for these business models that deliver profitability, inclusion, and environmental sustainability. At UNDP, we see the opportunity and have been working to support both companies and governments. I am the pleasure to lead the Istanbul International Center for Private Sector Development at UNDP, and we've developed a new methodology called Business Plus that measures the awareness of private sector on inclusive business. We launched this methodology in Turkey and conducted a study here, and what we found out is that Turkish companies have very low levels of engagement in inclusive business models and activities, high level of engagement in corporate social responsibility, but missing the opportunity to transform their business model in a way that opens that $12 trillion of market economy to companies in Turkey. We also found out in this study that Turkish companies have very little cooperation between Turkey companies and NGOs and government institutions. And what we found out for our global research is partnership is essential to advance new inclusive business models. The same studies we are replicating in the Philippines and in Brazil. Now, this study is like a baseline that tells you how companies understand and sees inclusive business models. I've just told you that with PwC found out that 92% of companies are aware of the SDGs. 72% of those companies want to engage, but only 13% have the tools to do it. So what we're starting to do is develop some of those tools. We've developed a tool called Inclusive Business Maturity Toolkit that it's in the website. I invited all of you to use it and come and talk to us about that. But it's also crucial to measure and understand impact. We live in a world of data, and more people want to see and understand data. Businesses are increasingly engaged in impact measurement and sustainability reporting. To capture the sustainability impact, at the same time, there is a growing public sector interest in capturing the business contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainability reporting and impact measurement are two practices used by companies to improve performance, account for impact, and publicly communicate sustainability data. Such information can help governments and strategic decision-making to identify appropriate business models and provide support with policy incentives. Under the G20 president's leadership, UNDP and the World Bank have led the development of an inclusive business framework, and that is our attempt to provide with the new and innovative regulations and policies that can allow for the business and for the government to come together in a partnership to be regulated, as I think Eamon is right, business will not be ethical on its own goodwill, but to be regulated, but provided the incentives in the regulations, they allow for the models that evolve in the 21st century to be inclusive, profitable, and environmentally sound. There is reason to be optimistic about trends in inclusive and sustainable business, but much more needs to be done. Continued leadership is required to create the conditions which promote viable business opportunities, such as green energy solutions, which are affordable to the poor, which, as I said, represent a $5 trillion market. Put in place regulations and policies which promote sustainability. For example, elimination of fossil fuel subsidies, using public procurement to support inclusion and sustainability and incentivize sustainable investments. Continue to promote financing which favors sustainable and inclusive business. While money isn't everything, big ambitions like the Sustainable Development Goals require big investments. Educate consumers to demand transparency and sustainability, and establish a new business model and new and innovative partnerships. Every country has work to do in order to achieve the SDGs. Professor Jeffrey Sachs says that we should get rid of the expression developed countries. In the eyes of the SDGs, every country in the world is a developing country. The United States of America is going to have a hard time achieving the SDG that talks about sustainable consumers. Every country and every business has a part to play. What is development? Development is the manifestation of hope. All of you and me we aim for always to make progress, to make a better life, to make better education, to have better health, to enjoy the wonders of this planet. Insofar as the Sustainable Development Goals are the most widely agreed global development agenda, the SDGs are a concrete manifestation of the hope that we can offer to each other. The hope that every person can live in peace, security, and have basic human rights. Knowing that you all will find your way to cooperate on the implementation of the SDGs. This agenda makes me hopeful that transformation is inevitable and will happen. Thank you very much.